The state of California is located on the west coast of the United States by the Pacific Ocean. It is the land of huge palm trees, sandy beaches, girls in bikinis, and of course, sunshine, a heaven for surfers and the film industry. The Golden Gate Bridge is the second longest suspension bridge of the United States, spanning the opening of the San Francisco Bay into the Pacific Ocean. Its construction began in 1933 and the bridge was opened to traffic in 1937. For the following 27 years, until the completion of the Verrazano Bridge in New York, the Golden Gate Bridge was the longest bridge in the world. The distance between the two huge steel pillars of the anchored suspension bridge is 1,280 meters. The bridge was designed by Joseph Strauss, Charles Ellis, and Leon Moissif. Alcatraz is a small island in the middle of the San Francisco Bay. It's most famous for its maximum security prison that operated here from 1934 to 1963 and held the biggest gangsters between the two world wars, such as Al Capone and George R. Kelly. Fishing boats, stands and restaurants offering the fruits of the sea. This is the famous Fisherman's Wharf, undoubtedly one of the most popular tourist sites of San Francisco. The promenades of Pier 39 are loud from the noise drifting out from the small shops, restaurants, cafes, and of course, the children's favourite attraction, the carousel. The Toy Museum and the best chocolate shop in the city are also here. Down below, in the water, seals bask in the sun lazily, their cries echoing over the chatter of the people. From time to time, a large herd of sea lions come and populate this famous coastal area of San Francisco, attracting thousands of tourists a day who come to see this extraordinary sight. The city built 6 new docks because there wasn't enough space for the sea lions. The harbour's owners and businessmen who make a living out of the tourism are glad for this free attraction. During the season, the famous marketplaces of the coast, Anchorage, Cannery, Giraldi Square and Pier 39 are teeming with people who want to get their hands on the best sea crabs of the freshest catch. A couple of crabs are enough for a typical picnic with some delicious French bread and rosé wine. This was first eaten by Isidore Baudin in 1849. But the delicacies that can be found here go far beyond crabs and the fish, and even the typical American kitchen. The population of San Francisco is a real mixture of nations. The city has a significant Chinese, German and Italian minority, and its selection of restaurants matches this. Although San Francisco is not one of the biggest American metropolises, its beauty is enticing. The huge bay, the Pacific Ocean, and the mild slopes give the city an enchanted atmosphere. The architecture of the city only goes back some 150 years. Frisco was built on 40 hills, and because of this we can hardly find any level streets. We are constantly either going uphill or coming downhill. The different neighbourhoods built next to each other all have a very different atmosphere. In the financial district, we are surrounded by skyscrapers and office buildings. Nob Hill is the most exclusive and most expensive neighbourhood of San Francisco with luxury villas. Pacific Heights is full of trendy shops and elegant restaurants. The winding Lombard Street on the peaceful Russian Hill is probably the most famous street in the city and is never missing from any films that are set in San Francisco. There are 8 40-degree bends in the area. One of the trademarks of San Francisco, the cable car, is almost solely used by tourists today. The very first cable-drawn tram was put into operation in 1873. Cable cars are a real entertaining and cheap way of transport. The drivers are real showmen who give their passengers an extraordinary ride. This national treasure, the cable car, runs on 3 routes and passed by the most famous tourist attractions. One of its final terminals is the Fisherman's Wharf. The California Street Line goes from the Embarcadero through the business district in Chinatown to the Van Ness Avenue. Tickets can be purchased from the driver and are valid for a single trip. The 37 cable cars run from 6 a.m. until midnight. There is usually a small wait at the terminals. Pacific Heights became famous for its late 19th century buildings. The majestic building of one of San Francisco's most renowned tourist attractions, the Palace of Fine Arts, looms in the nearby Marina District. The palace itself was designed by Bernard Maybeck. Its huge park, with the lake and the fountain, makes it a popular place for romantic weddings in the city. The biggest of California's 3 national parks, the Yosemite, lies east of San Francisco. Lake Marina is located 38 miles from Yosemite National Park. We can see the lake sparkling in the Pine Mountain range, but the snow-capped mountains of Sierra Nevada can also be seen in the distance. The peaceful waterfront, the whispering pine trees, and the beautiful hills make Lake Marina an ideal vacation spot. Here, water sport fans can pursue their hobby all year round thanks to the lake being protected. Boats, kayaks, sailboats, surfs and water skis can also be rented on the spot. Pleasure boats travel the lake and fishing permits can also be purchased in the harbour. The city of Groveland lies 26 miles from the entrance of the Yosemite Park and is reminiscent of the Californian gold rush. California's golden treasure washed slowly down the slopes of the Sierra Nevada range over millions of years. A farmer found a large gold nugget in a river in 1848. The news of this made its way slowly to the big cities of America, and at first many people didn't believe it. After the rivers ran out of gold, treasure hunters turned into miners and started looking for gold in the mountains. The small mining towns, so well known for Western films, came to life at this time. Typical porches, wooden houses, saloons, brothels, stables, grocery stores, gambling houses. In the small villages surrounding Sacramento, time seems to have stopped. The only difference is that the lead role is played by tourists in boots instead of handsome cowboys, and shooting is done with the cameras instead of double-barreled Winchesters. The Yosemite National Park in California is the second national park of the United States. The park was founded on the 1st of October in 1890. Its name, Yosemite, is of Indian origin and means grizzly, says the park's pamphlet. The 3,081 kilometre squared park lies on the western slopes of the Sierra Nevada mountain range. The park is home to hundreds of geological points of interest. The majority of its area is made of granite and only 5% of its area is of volcanic rock. Millions of years ago there were only smaller hills here, but then, due to earth movements, the granite block of Sierra Nevada emerged, and in the Ice Age this was shaped by glaciers. The best known and most visited part of the park is the valley of the Merced River, which was originally a glacier lake but was filled with river deposits over time. The 13-kilometre long and 1.5-kilometre wide Yosemite Valley that was formed this way was proclaimed the first protected land in America by Abraham Lincoln in 1864. Its wide U-shape makes it one of the most perfect glacier valleys in the world. The wide and flat valley is lined with steep granite walls that can be as high as 900 metres. Water seeped into the cracks in the stone and froze there, expanding the cracks. This is how the park's unique round formations such as the half dome came to life. The side of the half dome that faces the valley is almost vertical, while the other side looks like a huge dome. The symbol of the park is also a huge granite rock, the 1,095 metre high El Capitan, that is almost perfectly vertical. Erosion was milder in the side valleys, so these end far above the main glacier valley, and the melted glacier streams become waterfalls in the valley. The Yosemite waterfall, located next to the El Capitan, is 739 metres high and is the second highest waterfall in the world. The second largest waterfall in the park, the Snow Creek waterfall, is only 654 metres high. biggest treasure of the national park's plant life is the giant sequoia that populates the park in three main areas. Although the giant grizzly, with its height of 63 metres, isn't in the top 10 of the tallest giant sequoias, but with its 2,700 years of age, it is one of the oldest living creatures on Earth. In order to promote the propagation of the giant sequoias, the park's workers set the fallen dead leaves on fire to split the pine cones and germinate the seeds within. The big differences in altitude created very diverse plants and fauna. Besides the sequoia's black oak, Ponderosa pine and incense cedar dominate the lower regions of the park, while further up, meadows give home to 40% of the fauna. Grizzly bears and wolves have already disappeared from the park in the 19th century, but despite this, the park has a rich wildlife. The American black bear still inhabits the park, and along with the raccoons, they eat up most of the food left behind by visitors. Grey foxes, pumas, and mountain lions inhabit the undisturbed areas of the park. Chicory squirrels live in the sequoias and eat pine nuts. The Yosemite National Park has a lot to offer its visitors in all the seasons of the year. From the spring to autumn, the time is perfect for those drawn by the beauty of nature. In wintertime, lovers of winter sports will find here what their heart desires. Over 1,000 kilometres of trails are available to hikers, but tourists rarely dare to wander far from the centre. 90% of the visitors only get to know 1% of the park's total area. Monterey Bay enters the mainland in the middle of California's Pacific Ocean coastline. Following 15 years of design and planning, work has actually begun at an abandoned sand mine in Monterey Bay, some 500 kilometers south of San Francisco. According to the plans, the Monterey Bay Eco Resort and Residence will be one of the most innovative eco-hotels of the world, and also the home and workplace of hundreds of people. Hotel rooms and eco-houses will be built using the most modern environmentally friendly technologies developed so far. Pleasure boats set sail from the harbour, but we can also go fishing and rent the necessary equipment on the spot. In certain times of the year, unforgettable moments can be experienced on the boat trips on which we can observe the largest animal on Earth, the whale, from close up. Monterey is a leading producer of canned sardines, and 250,000 tons of sardines are canned here today. Lots of seals live in the shores of California. On the contrary to eared seals, real seals do not have an earlobe, and the testicles of the male of the species are within the abdomen. These factors decrease the drag and help the seal swim faster, so although they may seem sluggish and slow, they can reach up to 40 kilometers in the water. Their flippers are small and they cannot fold their dorsal fins under themselves, so they move clumsily on dry land. The huge bay, the Pacific Ocean, and the mild slopes give the city an enchanted atmosphere. A well-documented route, the Road of History, has been created for the tourist, along which we can pass by and admire all the important old buildings. Those who want to get to know the city better should visit the Custom House and the Maritime Museum. Lighthouse Avenue is lined by wooden Victorian buildings and leads to the lighthouse, from which we can see the whole bay. John Ernst Steinbeck, American writer and playwright, was born in Salinas, California in 1902 and wrote 26 books, 16 novels, 2 books of short stories, and several different works of prose. With The Grapes of Wrath and the play written from his novel Of Mice and Men, Steinbeck won the Pulitzer Prize. Steinbeck came from a family of German and Irishmen. His grandfather, Johann Adolf Groß-Steinbeck, shortened his name after emigrating to the United States. His father served as Monterey County Treasurer. John's mother, Olive Hamilton, a former schoolteacher, shared Steinbeck's passion of reading and writing. Steinbeck graduated from Salinas High School and attended Stanford University intermittently, where he also studied biology, eventually leaving without a degree. On the bank of the bay, in the barracks of the Cannery Row, made famous by Steinbeck, we now famously find busy boutiques, snack bars and cafes. The tourists have chased away the workers of the old fish processing area, and the latter are currently working in the factory that was built on the banks of the bay further away. In 1960, John Steinbeck bought a pickup truck, had it turned into a trailer, named it Rocinante, and drove across the United States with his faithful poodle Charlie. He wrote his book, Travels with Charlie, about this trip. In this sometimes comical, sometimes melancholic book, Steinbeck describes what he saw between the two coasts before returning to his home in Long Island. In this travel book, Steinbeck longs for his youth and the family roots that he lost. He praises but also criticizes America. According to his older son, the aim of his father's travel was to see the country once more before dying. The restored camper truck is on exhibit in the National Steinbeck Center in Salinas. In 1962, Steinbeck received the Nobel Prize for Literature for his realistic and imaginative writings, combining as they do sympathetic humor and keen social perception. Monterey Bay inspired another great author as well. The Scottish Robert Louis Stevenson was a prominent writer of young literature. He was the author of books such as Treasure Island, The Black Arrow, and The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Because of his tuberculosis, he was forced to spend most of his childhood in bed, where he entertained himself with stories. Then, when he was healthy again, he tried to learn the art of writing. He met Fanny van den Grift Osborne in France. Fanny was married and had 2 children, but, in spite of his parents' objections, Stevenson married her after her divorce. They settled down in Monterey, and Stevenson started writing essays for the Scribner. Later he rented a schooner and visited the Patagonian Islands. He died on the island of Samoa in 1849. Hearst Castle lies east of Morro Bay, exactly halfway between Los Angeles and San Francisco, atop a hill that rises out of the ocean mist even in wintertime. The castle was built for William Randolph Hearst in the 1920s. Hearst was one of the founders of the sensationalist American tabloid media. His mother was a popular woman who often gave to charity. Hearst only started building the 115-room luxury villa after her death. This monument of self-serving exhibitionism was built over 15 years. One of Hearst's most famous sayings has become the basic philosophy for tabloids. News is something somebody doesn't want printed. Don't be afraid to make a mistake. Your readers might like it. His fabulous wealth came partly from his tabloids and partly from his father, who was a mining engineer and an obsessive gold digger. After 10 years of unsuccessful digging, he finally found silver and founded the family wealth. 2 huge pools were built on the estate. The Roman pool is inside the house, while the Neptune pool outside can hold up to 1.3 million litres of water. Animals roam freely in the vast garden. Tibetan yaks, bears, peacocks, monkeys and kangaroos. The Hearst Castle in San Simone is basically an enormous house that is the realization of the childhood dream of its megalomaniac owner. Hearst wanted to surround himself with the world, and so the castle became unbelievably lavish and luxurious. Its magnificence implies the huge amount of money it took to build. The castle was designed by Julia Morgan, who fulfilled her client's every wish to the fullest extent. However, Hearst simply called this enormous estate a ranch. Those who have seen Orson Welles' Citizen Kane and remember what the main character was like already have an idea of William Randolph Hearst's personality, as a character was created in his likeness. Hearst employed dozens of art brokers who searched the whole world for antiquities, medieval tapestries, faiences, Chinese precious jewellery and porcelain. He also bought lots of artwork from Europe, such as 15th century Italian wooden ceilings, two embroidered tapestries of Louis XIV, statues from temples, furniture. Each room in the castle has a unique style. Sometimes Hearst even had a room built around one of his favourite objects. If he couldn't buy something, he had a copy made of it. He bought pulpits, altars, sacred and antique pictures from European temples and churches. The result was something eclectic, but unique in its own way. Hearst's partner, the actress Marion Davies, was famous for her lavish lifestyle and extravagant parties. The pretty, but not too talented Davies was originally a dancer of the famous Ziegfeld Revue, and starred in several singing, dancing movies. The great Hollywood stars of the 30s, 40s and 50s visited the castle of the wealthy media mogul. Charlie Chaplin, Mary Pickford, Rudolph Valentino, Gary Cooper, Clark Gable, Cary Grant and Greta Garbo were all frequent guests of the castle. When Hearst died in 1951, the building was still not finished. Later, the owner of the estate, the Hearst Corporation, donated the whole area to the estate. Some think it was an act of charity, others believe as payment for accumulated tax debt. The castle has 1 million visitors a year who have to follow the tour guides instead of wandering freely. There are 4 kinds of tours, each 90 minutes long. Moving south towards Los Angeles, the largest city of California, we come to the city of Solvang. The name Solvang means sunny field. Danish intellectuals founded the city in 1911 according to the Danish tradition and architectural style. The city is often accused of being artificial and touristic, but all the city has done was to preserve the style created by the immigrants from Europe. The tourists only came later and they were surprised at how different the place was. The sparkling clean streets could have been in Denmark or Switzerland. Solvang is anachronistic here in America, but besides being an interesting place, it also helps to ease the homesickness of Europeans who have been in the States for too long. The city wasn't built for the tourist and almost all houses look Danish, whereas Helen, Georgia wants to look like a Tyrolese town, but it is completely artificial. Tyrolese houses can only be found on the main street, and these are all restaurants and shops. None of the locals live there, and the purpose of the whole street is to serve tourists. Apart from the main street, almost everything looks like any other American town. Although it is clear that the main source of income in Solvang is also tourism, the place is not only a higher level of standard than Helen, but it is also more realistic, due to the fact that it is not a village museum, nor a set. Locals live their everyday lives and pursue their own trades. Many of them still take pride in their Danish and European ancestors. They often dress in the traditional dresses of their homeland, and their songs, dances are also original. It's mostly the American and Canadian tourists who want to learn the dances, as they are nothing new for Europeans. There are lots of bakeries in Solvang where we can taste delicious pastries, although they are more expensive than the average. It would be a shame not to try the Danish pancake and the æbleskiver that taste similar to the sweet pancake crumbs. Restaurant menus also offer the food and drink of the old country, and we can send real Danish souvenirs to our loved ones from America. Detached roof frame houses and weathercocks are just as special in America as the curious shaped churches and windmills. Santa Ynez is only a couple of miles from Solvang. Here, in the former mission, monks tried to change the Indians. Today, the mission is a small museum and its safe and extremely rich garden is worth a visit. The City of Angels has over 4 million inhabitants. If we include the suburbs, it's 15 million people. The coastal areas of modern Los Angeles have been inhabited by Indians for thousands of years. The Spanish were the first to arrive in 1542, led by Juan Cabrillo, but the Mission San Gabriel Arcangel was only founded in 1771 to ensure lasting influence over the land. The only thing Santa Ynez received from the conquerors was her name. Rodeo Drive, and a shopping centre for the rich and the beautiful, was close by. Vivian only had to cross the Wilshire Boulevard and a Dayton wait to get there. She had never been here before. She stared with a wonder at the elegant shop windows and the people walking on the sidewalk. Vivian's cheap clothes caused a sensation here, just like the expensive clothing of the ladies living here would have caused in Blue Banana. Louis Vuitton, reads one shop window. Chanel, says another. Diamonds on Rodeo, read Vivian a couple of steps further. And then Gucci. These names meant a lot to Vivian. She knew them from postcards, and she was astounded by the thought of being able to go into one of these famous shops to buy a dress for herself. Vivian laughed quietly, shaking her head, and stopped in front of one of the shops. Then she took a deep breath and entered the boutique. Beverly Hills owes its fame to films such as Pretty Woman and Beverly Hills Cop. The shopping streets of Los Angeles are among the few places where people still walk on foot. In Beverly Hills, many things are for our eyes only, especially on Rodeo Drive, where there are no price tags in the shop windows of luxury boutiques selling world-famous brands. The main hobby here is shopping. However, it must also be mentioned that Los Angeles is also a university town and a sports and cultural center of the West Coast. It has countless museums, stadiums, concert halls, exhibition halls, and galleries. The California Museum of Science and History is also here, along with the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles and the Getty Center, established by Paul Getty, the oil magnate, and exhibiting a wonderful collection of art. The Armand Hammer Museum of Art and Culture holds Monet and Van Gogh paintings as well. The stars have long left Hollywood and now live in luxury villas in Bel Air, Brentwood, and mainly Beverly Hills. They are protected from the paparazzi and prying fans by high fences and dense hedges. It's no secret which house belongs to which celebrity, as walking and also bus tours are organised in the area, and stargazers can buy a map of the area in tourist offices. The famous Sunset Boulevard runs south of the Hollywood Boulevard, and above it, on the Hollywood Hills, gigantic letters advertise the unfading fame of the Dream Factory. Hollywood, the city where dreams come true. Everything is possible here. Sound familiar? It's from one of the most popular Hollywood movies, Pretty Woman. There's so much meaning behind these words. Here, a shoe boy or an immigrant newspaper boy can become millionaire. A pot boy, waitress or store clerk can become a movie star. In Hollywood, people only do something as a temporary solution until someone discovers them and makes them a star. The Oscar Awards were previously held in the Ambassador Hotel, in the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion, and later on in the Shrine Auditorium. The Kodak Theatre was built in 2001 with the purpose of housing this great event. The Grauman's Chinese Theatre, named after its previous owner, is the most famous movie theatre in the world. The building looks like a colourful Chinese pagoda, while other theatres in the neighbourhood are in secession-style mansions that bring back the heyday of movie theatres of the 20s and 30s. The hand and footprints of the stars are embedded in the Walk of Fame. Rin Tin Tin and Lassie left the paw print, while Tom Mix pressed his horse's hoof into the clay. This also shows what an old tradition this is. a tradition that still exists today, and stars, actors, pop stars still find it an honour to have their name carved into the stone. The comedian Bob Hope said about TV in the 50s, "It's a small box where departed movies are buried." For a long time, stars of soap operas and serials were not given the honour of having a star and handprint in Hollywood. But this has changed. The heart of the movie capital is not here anymore. The studios have moved to San Fernando Valley. Universal Studios is the most famous of all the studios. Here we can visit old-time movie sets with minibuses, and the whole area is set up like an amusement park. Universal Pictures was founded by Carl Laemmle in 1912. He established Universal City Studios, the biggest filmmaking enterprise in the world near Los Angeles.
Good. Well, listen up, we got 4 more shows left today.
They made so-called economically secure movies that paid off and helped aspiring talents. In 1936, the older Laemmle sold the studio. Universal and International Pictures merged after Second World War.
Wow, Keith, that's impressive. Very, very impressive.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I know what blues. This is my brother Jake. We're on a mission from God.
In 1952, the company was bought by the Decca Records company. They signed on movie stars in the 50s who brought a few successful movies to the studio. In 1962, MCA acquired Universal, and under the direction of Louis Wasserman, the studio took the lead in producing shows for the television. They created the first television series ever. In the 1970s, Alfred Hitchcock was the most popular director of Universal Studios. The 1975 horror movie Jaws was a blockbuster. In the 80s, the company only had a few large hits like Spielberg's E.T. In 1990, the Japanese Matsushita Corporation bought the Universal MCA for $6 billion. The only thing the park has in common with films is that every feature of the park is somehow connected to a film, cartoon or television series. Everything here is just a mock-up, since the park is actually an amusement park, not a studio. We can see Hulk, Shrek, The Simpsons and many other cartoon and comic characters. The feature film shows, quote, among others, Jurassic Park, King Kong, The Mummy and Waterworld. Although there are some attractions for the young, this area specialised in the thrill, the constant excitement and trembling. That is, if you ever get your turn, because in some cases the wait is over an hour long. Of course, you can buy the most expensive express ticket, which guarantees you admittance ahead of others. The Hulk roller coaster is one of the most thrilling rides, rushing at breakneck speed between pedestrians and the bridge. This is no child's game. The train can reach the speed of 100 kilometers an hour, and there's also a zero-G zone which makes the ride more entertaining. At the exit, following the good American tradition, roller coaster riders can pick up their terrified face pictures. In sunny California, there's always time for a little wet fun. The punchline of every boat or vessel trip is that after a pleasant little cruise with nice music, the boats plunge into the lake and everyone gets soaked. The catapult is also funny. Brave adventurers sit on a platform around the tower and they get projected into the air by elastic cords, where, after a short period of negative acceleration, they go into free fall, then slow down into a controlled descent.
Okay.
Here's the gentleman guppy. I don't think so. Seconds? Yeah. All right, sweetheart, why don't you go pack? Boy, I've got some business to discuss. You can't beat me, you pathetic freak. Got your woman, got your friends. Who's gonna stop me now? You! I'm taking you with me. I'm taking you.
The Santa Monica Pier, or rather the giant carousel on it, is one of the most renowned and visited attractions in Los Angeles. Many soap operas and feature films are set here. This is the beach where the heroes of Baywatch saved countless lives, and this is where the cops of Pacific Blue rode their bikes. Los Angeles is the home of movie stars, wealth and glamour. A collection of enormous highways, smog, cacophony, luxury quarters, fortune hunters, stars, expensive shops, film studios, the citadel of show business. Many people think that the main tourist attractions are corny. Nevertheless, all hotels have a full house all year round. And if we can believe the statistics, 24 million tourists visit the city every year. There must be something about the city. The atmosphere is quieter and prices are lower in the coast than those downtown. Visitors are faced with never-ending rows of cheap souvenir shops. Of course, there's no lack of mindless and meaningless luxury. It's enough to visit Malibu, the 40-kilometer-long beach that offers unimaginable luxury for the people who have money to burn. Venice Beach is the heaven for the bon vivants, bohemians, hoodlums, and sightseeing tourists. Los Angeles is considered to be the entertainment capital of the world. Its main focus is on the film industry, but its role as music, art and architectural centre is also significant. With almost 5.5 million households, it's the second largest media market in the United States after New York. The biggest daily newspaper is the Los Angeles Times. The most renowned entertainment magazine is The Variety. Basketball is a very popular sport in Los Angeles, giving home to professional teams like the Los Angeles Lakers, Clippers and Sparks. LA's professional football club, the Los Angeles Galaxy, signed on the football star David Beckham in 2007, and professional hockey teams like the Los Angeles Kings and the Anaheim Mighty Ducks make their fans proud. If we are lucky, we might get a ticket to a local game to experience the feeling of a true Los Angeles sports event. SeaWorld, San Diego is situated in Mission Bay. This was the first of its kind and opened its gates in spring 1964. The view from the 98-metre high sky tower is spectacular. Originally, the park occupied 22 acres. Today it is spread out over 189 acres and is one of the most visited parks in the United States. We can take a cozy trip on the Mission Bay waters with one of the 30-metre-long Bayside Skyride gondolas. During the trip, we can enjoy a show about the intelligence of the dolphins and the pilot whales and the skillfulness of the orcas. Dolphins, except for the freshwater species, have to live in salt water constantly because their bodies have completely adapted to the seawater. The denser water makes swimming and floating more comfortable for their relatively heavy bodies. Dolphins are very sensitive to the concentration of salt in the water since they mostly live in the same area and under the same conditions. Their body is balanced in a way to make floating in their territory as easy as possible. This is especially important when the dolphins are sleeping or just relaxing. During this, their body floats and drifts on the surface. This position allows them to breathe through the blowhole on the top of their head. Bottlenose dolphins lived in 18 to 22 degrees Celsius water, while orcas and white-sided dolphins live in colder waters. It is also important to provide proper air conditioning. The air temperature has to be 1 to 2 degrees Celsius higher than the water temperature. In SeaWorld, along with the amusement park elements, we can see a large variety of birds, penguins and seals, but the main attraction is the dolphins. The dolphin's habitat is basically a large water tank filled with seawater. Today's tanks are usually oval or kidney-shaped, 20 to 25 metres long and 5 to 7 metres deep. The length of the water tank in SeaWorld San Diego is 20 metres, so bottlenose dolphins can achieve a swimming speed of 60 to 70 kilometres an hour and can jump up to 5 to 7 metres high. The central tank has 4 smaller 8 to 12 square metre surfaces and 3 to 3.5 metres deep tanks attached where dolphins spend their nights. Untrained and inexperienced animals are trained here under quieter conditions. The central tank and the water cells are connected by tunnels, which makes it easier to isolate the dolphins if necessary. They can be locked in separate underwater cages to stop them from disturbing and biting each other. The reinforced concrete tanks and the surfaces of underwater tunnels are carefully polished. This is a very important requirement to prevent animals from bruising their skin. Every tank has a 50 centimetre high glass wall which provides an excellent overview of the tank by the trainers and the visitors. Bottlenose dolphins are the most common dolphins to live in captivity and be trained. This is even true for Mediterranean countries, although there would be cheaper to catch common dolphins from the Mediterranean Sea. Specialists confirmed that common dolphins who live in packs are less docile. They can learn fewer tricks, they cannot jump as high, and feeding them is more difficult. The value of each of the dolphins is around $15,000 to $20,000. The Atlantic white-sided dolphin is less resistant to diseases, thus they are rarely seen in water parks and dolphin shows. The orca is the largest dolphin, but among the whales they are only medium large. A male whale's average length is 8 metres, 10 at most. The female is 7 metres long, 8.5 metres tops. They can be tamed relatively fast in an isolated environment. Their disadvantage is that they eat 3 to 4 times more than the bottlenose dolphins. The relatively slower and more sluggish white-sided dolphins can also be taught a few tricks. Seals and walruses are the clowns of the sea worlds and water worlds. Visitors can watch breathtaking shows at the shark and otter tanks, and the feeding of orcas and sea lions is always exciting. The staff of SeaWorld is very committed to wildlife protection, and they organise training and preservation programs. San Diego Zoo is also very popular, and as one of the largest zoos in the world, gives home to almost 800 animals and up to 4,000 plant species. The nearby San Diego Wild Animal Park gives home to a large number of endangered species and tries to reconstruct their original living conditions as much as possible. San Diego lies about 20 kilometers from the Mexican border. It is the 8th largest city in the United States and the 2nd largest in California. The first European to enter the region in 1542 was the Portuguese-born explorer Juan Rodriguez Cabrillo, sailing under the Spanish flag. 60 years later, on November 12, 1602, the Spanish explorer Don Sebastián de Vizcaino sailed along the coast. He reached the area where the city is currently located on the day of Saint Didactus, which is San Diego in Spanish, and so he renamed the city to San Diego. On February 2, 1848, the city was placed under American jurisdiction in accordance with the peace treaty ending the Mexican-American War. The ink had hardly even dried on the paper when people started pouring into the west coast due to the gold rush that broke out only days before the treaty was signed. This led to the rapid development of San Diego. The strategic role of the city became stronger after the Second World War, when part of the American Navy was moved here and played an important part in the economic growth of San Diego. A significant part of the American fleet is also harboured here. To honour the city, 4 different types of ships bear or have borne the name USS San Diego. From the end of the 1990s, the increase in tourism gave birth to a new industry and also gave the economy a fresh boost after the cutbacks in military spending following the end of the Cold War. Today, the real centre of San Diego is the Gaslamp Quarter. The train station is also here. In 1982, the city decided to renovate the once charming but now deteriorated quarter near the coast. The 16 blocks that were originally built in the 1910s and 1920s were overhauled inside and outside and given different functions. Streets are paved with red brick and are lit with electric gas lamps. Antiquities shops, art galleries, restaurants and coffee shops are all over the place. San Diego has a significant Mexican minority, and a strong Mexican influence can be felt in the city. This is due partly to the history of the city and partly to the closeness of the border. Seaport Village is almost the same as Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco. The only difference perhaps is that Seaport Village is a little more intimate and homely, but is no less entertaining. The harbour reinforces the general image that people have of California. We can bask in the sun and experience the incredible atmosphere that usually culminates in the weekends. The 100-kilometre long sandy beach is ideal for sunbathing and bathing. Many tourists visit the famous Mexican city of entertainment, Tijuana, that is just across the border, and here people can do things they are not allowed to do in the United States.